If you've ever believed that love and loyalty were enough to keep a family together, I understand you. I once believed the same. And if my story can do anything, it might help you realize that a home is not something built with bricks, but with things much more intangible. If you've ever felt betrayed within the very home you designed, follow this channel, because this is the story for you. I am Elliot Crane, 44 years old, an architect, co-founder of Crane Blackwood Designs, one of the top residential design studios in Seattle. For nearly 2 decades, I've helped create over 100 homes, from lakeside villas to high-rise apartments in the heart of the city. But there's one thing I never thought I would have to relearn from scratch, and that is how to keep my own roof over my head. I met Harper at an interior design exhibition in 2010. She worked in PR for an Italian kitchen appliance brand, and I was looking for someone to help with the media for my first design at Seattle Design Week. She walked into the room as if she knew all the rules and was ready to break them if necessary. I was never great at impressing people, but she was different. Harper knew exactly what to say, what to wear, how to smile, and strangely enough, she noticed me. 3 months later, we moved in together. A year after that, we got married. I remember how it felt then, not infatuation, but certainty. Harper made everything seem like it was moving in the right direction. My career skyrocketed because she built my personal brand better than any agency ever could. She told me, "Elliot, you design homes, but people need to see the person behind the design before they believe you can understand what they want." And I believed her. I always believed her. When the twins, Chloe and Miles, were born, I thought that was the pinnacle of what a man could dream of. I had a beautiful family, a smart wife, 2 healthy kids, and a steadily growing company. We bought a house in Lakeview. I personally designed the plans and chose each tile. Harper wanted the kitchen to face the garden. I complied. She wanted a light gray stone fireplace instead of a dark black one. I agreed. The house reflected her more than me, but I didn't mind. I thought, as long as we were both happy, what could be wrong with that? But perhaps my biggest mistake was thinking that devotion alone would be enough. I began to feel uneasy when Harper started taking on too many collaborative projects with Logan Vance, a new investor who had joined the company's board. Logan was the type of person who dressed too sharply even when visiting construction sites, spoke as though addressing an invisible audience, and called anyone who hadn't studied for an MBA a practitioner. I didn't like him, but Harper did. She told me not to be stubborn, that Logan knew how to elevate a brand, and we need people like him if we want to scale up. At first, I believed her. Then, Harper's business trips began overlapping with Logan's schedule. One day I joked, "You and Logan work so well together, I guess you're about to co-author a book." Harper didn't laugh. She simply responded with a look as if I had just wasted her time. Gradually, I felt more and more disconnected in the very house I had designed. Harper was spending less and less time at home in the evenings. She spoke about work as if I no longer had any part in it. One night, I stayed up late finishing a drawing for a client in Chicago, and I heard Harper's phone ringing in the bathroom. A call from LV at 1:12 a.m. I didn't do anything. I just turned off the light and kept drawing. Because I once thought, as long as I played my part, as a husband, a father, a designer who didn't complain, everything would be fine. What I didn't know at that time was that Harper had started writing a different script, one where I was the one being written out, and she wasn't doing it alone. I don't remember exactly the moment that made me move from doubt to action. Maybe it was the night Harper came home late for the 6th time that month, entering through the back door with her coat draped over her arm and a scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering in the air. She said the meeting with Logan ran longer than expected because of budget issues with the Phoenix Trail project. I just nodded, as usual, then looked at the clock. 12:47 a.m. Harper went to the bathroom, and I went down to the basement where I had set up my desk, the quietest place in the house, also where I had drawn many of the designs featured in major magazines. I opened the company's internal server, looking at the familiar interface. We had both used the same data system since Crane Blackwood Designs was founded. Harper had once said it created transparency and creativity. I thought she was right, at least at that time. I'm not the type of person who is good at suspicion, but I am good at noticing abnormalities, the details that stray from the overall blueprint. And lately, everything about Harper seemed off. Her gaze when she looked at me, how she hid her phone when entering a room, even the way she went silent when I mentioned Chloe getting an art scholarship. I opened Harper's user interface on the system, using the administrator account to install remote tracking software. Just a small plugin to back up design data, but I added a hidden code, a line of command that allowed me to see what Harper was working on, the messages she was sending, and the files she was opening. I did this in silence, not with anger, but with the precision of someone who once designed a suspension bridge where even the smallest mistake could cause the entire structure to collapse. 3 days later, I received the first copy. Harper had just sent an email with the attached file, revised custody plan draft.pdf. The recipient was Logan Vance. I opened that file at 2 a.m. in under the yellow light of my desk lamp. The first sentence made my throat dry. Elliot is not violent, but we can establish an image that he lost control due to work stress. This will support my request for full custody of the children. I couldn't believe my eyes. I kept reading. Every detail Elliot has contributed to the company files, from ownership to client contracts, can be valued. If we separate the company into two sectors, branding and engineering, Logan can take ownership of the construction phase. This will create a legitimate reason for me to transfer my part to him. I stopped for a long while, not because I was shocked, but because everything had become so clear that it was undeniable. I quietly saved the file with a private code, then returned to the data navigation. There were additional messages from Harper sent through the internal app, where she used to share project updates. But now the content was something entirely different. Harper, he's good at design, but not good at reading people. He won't see that he's being replaced until everything is done. Logan, we've only got 2 months left. After the shareholders meeting, I'll jump into the auditing section. And you? Just keep up the image of the neglected wife. I read the line good at design, but not good at reading people twice. That sentence stuck with me even more than their scheming to take custody of the kids or divide the company. I had once drawn a life with Harper. I had once believed she understood me more than anyone. And now she was speaking of me as if I were just furniture, useful until I was outdated. I didn't cry, I didn't get angry, I just sat silently for a few hours staring at the black screen in front of me. Then I got up, went into the bedroom and looked at the kids sleeping under the cloud-shaped nightlight. Miles was softly snoring, still clutching the wooden truck I had made. Chloe stirred slightly, whispering Dad in her sleep. I knew I couldn't lose them. The next morning I changed my routine. I started arriving at the office earlier. I met up with Will, a college friend who now worked as a legal consultant for construction companies. I didn't go into details. I just said, if one day I need it, could you look up any temporary share transfer cases within the linked corporate law framework? I began storing all company documents, the ones I had once believed Harper would never touch. Tax invoices, meeting minutes, profit distribution, the time she signed without reading. I printed out copies of all the screenshots of messages, emails, and shared files. I also reached out to Samuel, a technology partner who had helped me design an automation system in a smart home project in Oregon. I asked him to recover the data Harper had recently deleted from the company's backup hard drive. What's going on? Samuel asked. I just shook my head. I just need everything to be clear as soon as possible. Some nights, I still stop in front of the hallway where Harper used to hang our wedding photo. That photo has now been replaced by one of a staff group at a fundraising gala. Harper is in the center with her hand lightly resting on Logan's shoulder, smiling. The kind of smile I once thought was only for me. I looked at the photo, then at the stack of documents growing each day under the table. Every piece of evidence is a brick I'm stacking, not to destroy, but to rebuild the boundary. I know Harper thinks I'll break down, that I'll go looking for her and ask why. But I don't need an answer. I just need the truth. And I have it. The only question now is when I'll put it on the table, and in front of whom. If you're listening to this and wondering whether you should do something when everything around you starts to drift away from the original blueprint, then perhaps the answer is already in your hands. Don't wait for someone else to fix it for you, because no one can hold the structure better than the one who originally designed it. One thing I learned after 20 years as an architect: if you find cracks in the foundation, you don't run off shouting. You measure every angle, examine each layer of concrete, and silently calculate the supporting forces that need to be replaced. Reacting too early causes everything to collapse faster. But reacting at the right time, in the right place, can save an entire building. I spent nearly 2 weeks after discovering Harper and Logan's plan doing only one thing: rebuilding the force map, not for the house in Lakeview, but for what remained in my life. Every night after Chloe and Miles had fallen asleep, I returned to my office in the basement, turned off the main lights, turned on the desk lamp. Alone, I faced a stack of printed emails, backup hard drives, and a file of documents growing thicker each night. I no longer asked myself why she did this. The question now was, how far had she gone? And I started tracing the trail. Emails and internal meeting recordings were my starting point. Harper didn't know that I had set up an automatic recording system in the main meeting room since our negotiation with the Middle Eastern partner 3 years ago. We didn't use it often, but I never took it down. At the time, it was just to avoid misunderstandings in the meeting minutes. Now it was living proof. I went through the meetings with Harper and Logan in the past 4 months. The recording from April 17th made me stop and put my pen down for a few minutes. Logan, I think we can transfer Harper's share into a trust fund. As long as the person on record is a family member, we won't need to report it to the shareholders. Harper, I plan to use Miles's name. There's an overseas investor who can create a cover for the fund. Elliot won't notice anything until everything is done. I hit pause. My right hand clenched the pen. My son's name, in the dirty financial plan. A pretext, a tool. I reopened the internal financial system and went through every line of Harper's transactions. And there it was, hidden among the project transactions, a transfer of $250,000 to an account under the name Miles C. Crane, Guardian, Harper Crane. The benefiting bank was located in Grand Cayman. I clicked on the investment contact section, and the text appeared, Joint Trustee, Logan Vance. I didn't need any more evidence to know that this had crossed the ethical line. I contacted the only person I knew could assess the seriousness of this without panicking: Eric Sandler. Eric was my college friend. He had been a prosecutor specializing in financial crimes. Now he ran an independent law firm focused on protecting businesses from asset acquisition risks, money laundering through investment funds, and shareholder disputes. Eric was the type of person who never smiled inappropriately. He was always straightforward, and I needed that. We met in a cafe far from downtown, a place where no one knew me. I opened my laptop, placed the paper files next to the untouched espresso cup. Eric read in silence for 20 minutes. No questions, no interruptions. Finally, he looked up, sighed. Elliot, do you know this constitutes fraud on 3 different legal levels? It involves abuse of guardianship, shareholder fraud, and conspiracy to launder money. I nodded without saying anything. What do you intend to do with this? Eric asked. I'm not sure, I replied. I just know I need to protect the kids and the company. Eric looked at me for a moment, then spoke slowly. You don't need to sue right away, but you need to prepare a complete legal file. Every piece of evidence must be timed, stored properly, and securely replicated. I returned home that night with a list of actions longer than the blueprint for a 3-story garden house. But at least this time I knew I wasn't alone. The next 7 days were a careful, meticulous journey, not of someone catching cheaters, but of someone building a defensive base. I created a 3-layer encrypted folder named Slate Foundation. Inside, I categorized financial transactions, bank statements, proof of transfer to the account under the child's name, messages and emails, screenshots with server timestamps, recording and meeting minutes, verified for legal integrity by Eric, legal analysis, clauses that Harper and Logan might be violating, from minor child protection rights to the company's internal charter. I also sent a copy of the file to a secure off-state storage managed by Eric. Each piece of evidence was assigned its own code, with confirmation of data integrity stored by a third-party legal expert. I didn't plan to attack, but if Harper chose to escalate, I wouldn't go into battle empty-handed. One late evening, I stood in my children's room, watching Miles sleep soundly. I placed my hand on his chest, feeling his steady breathing. Something inside me cracked, gently but decisively. I once thought I could never forgive Harper if she betrayed me. But at that moment, what kept me up was not the emotional betrayal, but the fact that she was willing to use my son's name in a money laundering scheme just to dodge an audit. Harper was once the sharp woman who knew how to read a room, how to maintain an image. Now she had become someone willing to sacrifice both her image and her child to protect a fragile power. I called Eric the next morning. "There's one more thing I want you to prepare," I said. "What is it?" he replied. "A temporary agreement to transfer all of Harper's shares to a trust fund that I control, only to be used if necessary." Eric stayed silent for a moment, then replied, "Got it. But if it comes to that, it means you're choosing to confront her." I didn't say anything more. In my mind, there was only one image, a neat white envelope, placed carefully on the table, and someone who wouldn't know what was waiting inside until they had opened it. I haven't given that envelope to anyone yet, but it's ready. That morning began like any other Tuesday morning. I arrived at the office at 7:20, nearly an hour earlier than the first scheduled meeting. GM made black coffee and opened all the curtains in the second floor conference room. The September sunshine in Seattle was as gentle as a breath. On the desk was the draft for a floating restaurant I was designing for a Japanese client, the drawing still unfinished, but every line clean and intentional. I kept working. I kept living as usual. The only difference was that today I knew what was coming. At 9:08 in the morning, the receptionist called internally. "Mr. Crane, there's a person named Mitchell Gray. He says he's Harper's lawyer. He has an appointment with you this morning." "I'm expecting him," I replied. Mitchell Gray entered the meeting room at 9:12, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, holding a thick file, walking quickly but not in a hurry. The type of person who seemed to have won too many cases to still care about politeness. I invited him to sit. No handshake, no pleasantries. It wasn't necessary. "I'll get straight to the point," Mitchell began, his voice flat, like reading a statement. "My client, Mrs. Harper Crane, requests the following terms for the divorce settlement. She retains full ownership of the house at Lakeview, full custody of Chloe and Miles, and control of 47% of the shares in Crane Blackwood Designs, the portion she has contributed to building, either directly or indirectly, over the past 10 years. I wasn't surprised. I didn't ask again. I just leaned forward and opened the drawer of my desk, took out a white envelope, the kind of regular office envelope, and placed it on the table right between us. "Before you continue," I said slowly, "I think you should look at this." Mitchell frowned slightly. He opened the envelope. Inside was the complete set of evidence that Eric and I had arranged. Then a bank statement with Miles C. Crane's name, a trust fund contract signed by Logan Vance, a screenshot of the email Harper sent about the plan to remove Elliot from the company, and the recording of the meeting mentioning the act of misappropriating guardianship assets. Mitchell flipped through each page. His hand trembled slightly. When he saw the financial analysis from Eric, his expression changed. The confident look faded into a more cautious one. "I haven't sent this to the press," I said, my voice steady, "and I haven't sent it to court either. But if needed, this would be enough to turn everything from a divorce case into a criminal investigation, with at least 3 parties involved, one being a minor." Mitchell didn't respond immediately. He sat still, as if recalculating his move in his mind. I didn't rush him. I simply sat quietly, my hand on the edge of the table, my eyes fixed on one point. Not overwhelming, not threatening, just simply unafraid. Finally, he spoke, slowly, carefully. "I will need to discuss this with my client." Of course I nodded. "And when you do, tell her this. I don't need to win. I just want to protect what was mine from the beginning." Mitchell closed the file, placed all the documents into the envelope. But before he stood up, I added one more sentence. "There's another copy that has already been sent, in case this envelope doesn't reach the right person." He froze, his face tightened like steel. I looked directly into his eyes. "I design, Mr. Gray. I don't just draw pretty things. I design to make things stand, even in the wind. so I don't build anything without proper support structure. Mitchell left the office without leaving any papers behind, no follow-up appointment. The door closed behind him, softly but decisively. I sat for a long while doing nothing, just listening to the ticking of the clock. Slow and steady, 9:41. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel triumphant. What I felt then was peace, the peace of someone who knew they had prepared enough. That afternoon, Harper didn't call, but I received a message from Eric at 4:28 in the afternoon. Lawyer Mitchell just contacted. They're requesting to pause negotiations and propose a private meeting with me. No details. I simply replied, "Good, it's starting." That evening, I sat in the kitchen in a house still lit with the golden light Harper had once chosen for the Nordic warmth ambiance. I poured a glass of bourbon, sitting alone. The music Miles had been practicing yesterday still faintly played through the Bluetooth speaker by the bookshelf. I opened my phone, went to the Slate Foundation folder, and reviewed each file, like checking the blueprints one last time before laying the foundation. Some battles don't require shouting, don't require a courtroom. They just require the right timing, the right data, and an envelope opened in a well-lit room. I didn't say much, but I design well. And in Harper's game, she forgot that. She forgot that not everyone just builds houses. Some people also know how to take apart each brick without making the wall collapse. Harper called me on Wednesday night, 2 days after Mitchell Gray left the office without making another appointment. The phone number still displayed the old one. The label Harper, personal, had not been deleted from my contacts. I let it ring. Once, twice, then I stopped. A minute later, a message came in. "We need to talk. No lawyers." I stared at the screen for a long time, then set the phone down on the table. I didn't reply. The next morning, Eric sent a summary from the other side. Mitchell had suggested renegotiating. They wanted a peaceful solution. No litigation, no media. Of course, because now what they feared wasn't losing the Lakeview house, but losing something bigger. Image, reputation. The social standing Harper had spent over a decade building. I agreed to meet, but not at the office. I chose a different location, a rented meeting room at a private center near the docks. A small room, cold lighting, a glass table, 4 chairs. No name, no signage, no media. Nothing Harper could control with her words. She entered at 10:03, 3 minutes late. Mitchell didn't accompany her. Harper wore a beige blazer, her hair neatly tied, light lipstick. Her face no longer carried the sharpness I usually saw. It was the face of someone who knew they no longer held the cards. "I want everything to end quietly, Elliot," she began. I nodded. "I feel the same. But silence doesn't mean I don't know what's happening." She looked at me as if wanting to say something. I placed my hand on the black folder in front of me and opened it. No theatrics, just procedure. "I'll be straightforward," I said. "If Harper wants to take this to court, I'll have to let financial authorities and the press intervene, and both Chloe and Miles will know what their mother has used their names for." I pushed the file across to her. She opened it. The first page was of photos of Harper and a yoga vacation at a Napa villa, hand in hand, walking into the villa they had rented under the fake name Grant and Ellis Holdings. The angle of the photo was taken from afar, but clear enough to be undeniable. The second page was a transfer slip of $250,000 from the company's internal account to a fund under the name Miles C. Crane, with the note for silent partnership, Vance Management. The third page was an audio transcript, a section where she spoke with Logan. "He deserves to lose everything if he doesn't realize who's really in control." Harper didn't turn to the next page. She let the file fall on the table, her eyes not leaving the glass surface. I didn't think you'd do this," she whispered. "I didn't think you'd use our son's name to funnel money through a fund for someone like Logan." I replied, neither cold nor cruel. "Just the truth. We used to be a team, Elliot," she murmured. "You said we were each other's support structure. I don't know when everything started to go wrong." I looked straight into her eyes. "It went wrong the moment you decided to add another floor, but hid the cracked foundation." Silence filled the room for a few seconds. Harper closed her eyes and leaned back in her chair. So, what do you want now? I took another sheet from the file. You will sign here, giving up all shares in Crane plus Blackwood Designs, returning all assets in Miles's name, and signing the custody agreement for the kids to me, with open visitation rights, but no decision-making rights. She didn't say anything. I continued. In return, I won't send these documents to the press. There will be no complaint filed with the Securities Commission. Logan can continue to live out of the public eye, at least for now. Harper sat still, one hand gently grasped the hem of her jacket. You'll lose everything, she said quietly. I replied slowly, No, Harper. You only lose what you gambled away. The rest, your role as a mother, as a person, still lies in what you choose after today. She looked at me for a long time. Then with trembling hands, she picked up the pen. After the meeting, Eric received the signed copy. We finalized the legal file. Harper officially withdrew from all positions in the company. The account in Miles's name was closed, and the money was returned to the common fund, under third-party supervision. Logan disappeared from Seattle without a word. I didn't track him anymore. He was no longer part of this story. The day the agreement was signed, Harper didn't cry. But when I stood up, preparing to leave, she asked one question. Did you ever really love me, Elliot? I stopped. Then I replied without turning around. I once built my whole life around you, Harper. If that's not love, then I don't know what love is. That evening, I returned home, personally rearranged the hallway wall, where our wedding photos used to hang. I took down the frame, pulled the nails from the wall, and left it empty. Chloe walked over, curious. What are you doing, Dad? I looked at her, then smiled. I think it's time to hang something new. She nodded. How about we hang a picture of Miles playing baseball? I nodded. Good idea. Daughter sometimes is not about returning things to how they were. It's about clearing the place where chaos once was and making space for kindness to step in. I didn't win with anger. I didn't seek revenge with force. I simply placed an envelope on the table. At the right time, the right person, and let them see themselves in it. Silence, if used correctly, is the thing that makes every game piece change. There are people who dig holes for others. Then they fall into the very hole they dug. I didn't make Harper fall. I just let her walk to the edge without reaching out to stop her. The final agreement was signed on a quiet Friday afternoon without any press conferences. Harper officially withdrew her divorce petition, relinquished all shares in Crane plus Blackwood Designs, the rights to manage the trust fund assets, and the custody of the two children. She only kept limited visitation rights, every 2 weeks, one weekend. She signed without saying a word. Placing the pen down, she left the meeting room with Mitchell, not looking back. Logan Vance disappeared from the company just a week later. No announcement, no formal resignation. We received an email from his assistant. Mr. Vance will be taking a break to focus on personal projects outside the area. A fancy way of saying he ran away. But the internal emails from the finance team told a different story. Logan had been reported from within, a financial employee, someone I rarely spoke with but always paid attention to the numbers, had discovered at least 3 transfers of money through intermediary investments that Logan had his name on. The money matched what I had included in the Slate Foundation file. I didn't need to get involved. The internal system had already taken care of itself. I just sent the recordings to the right place. The rest, the truth, took care of itself. I didn't track Harper, but the news about her found me. First came an email from a friend in the advertising industry. Elliot, Zenith just canceled its contract with Harbor PR. Is this because of Harper? I didn't respond, but when I went to LinkedIn, Harper's name no longer appeared under the company's leadership section. A few days later, Harbor PR's official website moved its About Us section to updating. Then a month later, I heard from Chloe, casually during dinner. Dad, she said while eating her salad, my teacher said Mom called to apologize for missing Miles's pickup on Thursday. But I think she's at Grandma's, right? I just nodded. Yeah, that's right. Mom needs some rest. A simple response. Gently. Enough for Chloe to understand without any harm. I knew Harper had left the luxury apartment in First Hill. A friend who lived nearby told me they saw a moving truck outside on Tuesday. Her new address was an old house in Tacoma, her mother's house. Evelyn, the woman who always looked at me as though I were a piece of furniture awkwardly placed in a crystal dining room. Harper deleted her Instagram account 3 days after the agreement was finalized. Her Twitter, the one filled with motivational quotes like, "Success is built, not inherited," had gone silent the day she left the company. I wasn't happy about it, but I felt relief because everything was returning to its proper shape, not distorted, not embellished. One Sunday afternoon, I walked with Miles in the park near the house. He was riding his bike. I walked behind him. The rain had just stopped. The path was still wet, but the air was cool. When we stopped to drink water, Miles looked at me and asked, "Dad, is Mom sad?" The question made me pause. I sat down beside him. "Maybe she is," I answered. "But being sad is something Mom has to go through. It's not your fault." He nodded, then continued riding his bike, not asking anything else. He understood. My company, Crane Blackwood, started to stabilize after the turmoil. Some partners who hesitated when Harper left now returned in scheduled meetings. One old investor told me, "Honestly, Elliot, we've always preferred working directly with you." I just smiled without responding. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. My name on the front door was enough. Harper still visits the children regularly, at least for now. She dresses more simply, no longer carrying luxury bags, no longer wearing high heels. One time she brought cookies she had baked herself, the first time since Chloe's birthday in 2019. I always let the kids choose for themselves. I don't forbid, I don't badmouth, but I don't avoid it if they ask. I believe Harper is relearning something she might have forgotten. That being a mother doesn't come from image, but from action. From real presence, not flashy. And I've also relearned something, that even a strong house can rot from within if you forget to check the foundation. But if you're sharp enough to look back, calm enough to fix it, you can still rebuild. No need to tear it down, just replace the cracked bricks with something real. That night, I sat down to write a letter to the trustee lawyer, asking to place Chloe and Miles in a separate education fund, completely independent from the company and all my assets. I wanted them to grow up without paying the price for the mistakes adults made. I looked at the signed letter, folded it, and placed it in an envelope. Another envelope, not to threaten, not to retaliate, simply to ensure the things that matter won't be traded again. If anyone ever asked me if I regretted it, I wouldn't answer right away. I need them to understand that not all wounds create hatred. Some cracks are just a reminder. Build slower, build stronger, and only with those who also know how to appreciate the foundation, like I do. Because deep holes often begin with a small crack. And if you don't look closely, you might just be the one falling into it first. I don't celebrate. No parties, no congratulations. No one patted me on the back and said, "You've won." I didn't need that. All I needed was to sit back in the house where for the past 10 years, I was just the one laying the bricks. Now I chose to repaint the living room for the first time in the color I wanted. A cool, gray, soft like mist. I took down the abstract paintings Harper had chosen and replaced them with Chloe's hand-drawn pictures. A strange sun, purple and orange, but maybe more real than any interior color palette that had ever been approved. Every weekend, I spent time on the small things, fixing the back balcony, adding a reading light in Miles's room, rearranging the armchair by the fireplace. The chair I had never sat in long enough to feel like it was truly mine. Chloe had a small concert on the first Friday after the winter break. I sat in the second row, surrounded by parents in thick coats, holding their phones to record. When she stood up, holding her small violin, her eyes found me first. I just smiled and nodded slightly. She pursed her lips, anxious, then began to play. The first note was shaky, but then everything flowed smoothly. When the final note finished, I didn't clap right away. I saw Chloe exhale, her shoulders drop, her eyes blinking lightly. I didn't need to say anything. She knew I was there. She knew I was listening. Miles, on the other hand, is a breeze out of season, always full of energy. In the weekend's baseball game, he wore gloves that were too big, ran slower than his friends. But when he hit the ball and ran around the bases, he looked at me and yelled, "Dad, did you see?" I saw. I always see. My company, Crane plus Blackwood, began to stabilize after the turmoil. A few partners who hesitated when Harper left now returned to schedule meetings. An old investor told me, "Honestly, Elliot, we've always preferred working directly with you." I just smiled without responding. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. My name on the front door was enough. Harper still visits the kids regularly, at least for now. She dresses more simply, no longer carrying luxury bags, no longer wearing high heels. One time she brought cookies she had baked herself, the first time since Chloe's birthday in 2019. I always let the kids choose for themselves. I don't forbid, I don't badmouth, but I don't avoid it if they ask. I believe Harper is relearning something she might have forgotten. That being a mother doesn't come from image, but from action, from real presence, not flashy. And I've also relearned something, that even a strong house can rot from within if you forget to check the foundation. But if you're sharp enough to look back, calm enough to fix it, you can still rebuild. No need to tear it down. Just replace the cracked bricks with something real. That night, I sat down to write a letter to the trustee lawyer, asking to place Chloe and Miles in a separate education fund, completely independent from the company and all my assets. I wanted them to grow up without paying the price for the mistakes adults made. I looked at the signed letter, folded it, and placed it in an envelope. Another envelope, not to threaten, not to retaliate, simply to ensure the things that matter won't be traded again. If anyone ever asked me if I regretted it, I wouldn't answer right away. I need them to understand that not all wounds create hatred. Some cracks are just a reminder. Build slower, build stronger, and only with those who also know how to appreciate the foundation, like I do. Because deep holes often begin with a small crack. And if you don't look closely, you might just be the one falling into it first. I don't win with anger. I don't need to shout louder than anyone. I don't need to reclaim the stage. I just present the truth at the right time, in the right place. And sometimes that's enough. We are taught that to protect ourselves, we must fight with our voices, with resistance. But there are times when the strongest thing you can do is remain silent until you're sure your hand holds something undeniable. Evidence, data, and calmness. Harper thought I would break, that if she controlled the narrative just right, I would be rewritten as a bad father, a careless husband. But what she didn't know is that I don't need to control the story. I just need to hold on to the truth. And in a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, sometimes it's the silence, grounded in reason, that forces all other sounds to stop. I don't advise you to become cold-hearted. I just want you to remember, if you are being pushed to the sidelines by those who think they are smarter, louder, more manipulative, be prepared. Hold on to your own truth and be patient. Because one day, just one envelope, placed in the right spot, opened at the right moment, can change the entire game. No need for shouting, no need for weapons. Just as long as you are the last one still standing. And when that moment comes, you'll understand. Silence is never weakness. It's just waiting for the right moment to become the final answer.